everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Elia. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I really wanted to make an in-depth movie review for In the Heights on my podcast, Labyrinth of the Bizarre, but In the Heights isn't speculative fiction, so we can't technically review it on our podcast, but I'm not going to let that stop me, so I am making a very, very lengthy YouTube video analyzing the fuck out of this movie. A factor that really pushed me into making a movie review for In the Heights is that this is my favorite musical. The messages of this musical I hold really close to my heart, and unfortunately, the movie was ass. Full transparency. I know that movie musicals don't typically copy-paste the musical into the movie, but the changes in this one are just so drastic and also really problematic. It kept me up at night. I could not deal with this shit. And so I'm making a really long video essay to just let that shit out so I can just let it go. Before we get into the review, I have some basic stuff I want to say. I am not a Latine person. This is not my representation. This is not my community. I am consciously trying to make sure I do not overstep and speak over Latina people. I am a first-generation Philippine-American immigrant. I want to be very clear that the experiences of immigrants of color are not synonymous, and experiences of first-generation immigrants are different. I will be speaking on the themes of immigrant experiences that resonate with me personally and my interpretation of it. I'm also kinda confident in my opinion of this movie in general because of the huge backlash this movie has received from Latina people, especially Afro-Latina people, and just the blatant colorism in this movie to the point where Lin-Manuel Miranda, the creator of the musical, made a public apology on Twitter. To my Latina and immigrant viewers, if I say something that could be worded better or said more respectfully, please bring that to my attention so I can learn from that, make those corrections publicly, and be a better ally. I also want to credit my podcast co-host, Rhea, who is Latina. They did give me insight and perspective on how they handled topics in this movie, particularly the topic of people who are undocumented. Another thing I want to clarify, when I say American, I mean people in the United States. I try not to say American because there's so many ethnicities and countries in the Americas, and the United States claiming American as their identity is a form of white supremacy, but there are some phrases that are just unavoidable in this video. This review is gonna go way deep into spoilers for both the movie and the musical, so if you do mind hearing spoilers for either of those, I suggest you stop watching this video right now, go watch the movie and musical, and then come back to this. Just so we're all on the same page, when I say musical, I mean the Broadway musical, and when I say movie, I mean the movie musical. There is a lot to critique in this movie, and I can't cover everything because one, this is not my representation, and two, there's just so much to talk about. And as much as I would love to talk about the artistic choices and the performances in the movie, it's just a lot to speak on. This video is solely going to be an analysis of its political themes in both the movie and the musical. Just to give a brief overview of what the musical represents, it has themes of family, cultural community, purpose, legacy, American immigrant struggles, particularly American immigrant identity and critiquing the American dream. It also critiques white supremacy in the forms of gentrification and capitalism. And gentrification is a form of capitalism, but just gotta really emphasize that. The movie tosses out some of those themes and tries to emphasize the others, although it is not done successfully. I'm going to start off with two critiques that don't really fit anywhere else in my layout for this video. Piragua has been my least favorite song in this musical forever. I don't hate it. I think it's fun, but it's definitely a filler song. However, in the musical, it still serves a purpose. In the musical, there is obvious tension between the Piragua owner and Mr. Frosty. I wouldn't label it a rivalry because that implies an equal amount of power on both sides, and the Piragua owner expresses a feeling of powerlessness and a lack of agency because Mr. Frosty represents gentrification. The Piragua owner holds deep resentment towards Mr. Frosty, not only for stealing his source of income, but also for invading invading his safe space and his community with his flashy, modern ice cream truck. The contrast of the piragua cart to the ice cream truck, it's literally pointing out how white supremacy has historically invaded communities of color and pushed out things that they think are outdated. Because the way of the colonists is to present their way of life as the ideal to strive towards. This is not just an ice cream truck, this is an example of white supremacy persevering. And when Mr. Frosty's truck breaks down during the blackout and during really hot weather, people turn to the piragua cart, giving the small local business owner back his power and ownership of his place in his community. In the movie, this is completely taken away, as it is framed entirely as a comedic business rivalry. Lin-Manuel Miranda, the creator of In the Heights, and also the original actor for Usnavi in the Broadway cast, he plays the piragua owner. Christopher Jackson, who originally played Benny, plays Mr. Frosty. This becomes problematic because Mr. Frosty represents gentrification. So it's weird and it doesn't translate the way it's supposed to because Mr. Frosty is owned by another person of color. Piragua in the movie just becomes fan service and for comedy, and it really loses its original meaning. I'm doing a lot of hand gestures, but you can't even see it, and it's really annoying. Speaking of white supremacy, 96,000 is a song with the whole cast. They found out that somebody in the community has won the lottery for $96,000, and they spend the song singing about what they would do with that money. In 96,000, there was a line in the musical where Benny says, "I'll be a businessman richer than Nina's daddy, Donald Trump and I on the links, and he's my caddy." In the movie, they changed Donald Trump to Tiger Woods. Here's my problem with this change. Golf has been, and still is, a symbol of white supremacy. The chemicals to keep the grass green is really bad for the environment. It is a waste of space for a small group of rich white people when that space could be utilized to supporting marginalized groups, such as housing, because we don't have affordable housing for people. Golf is seen as an elite leisure activity that gatekeeps marginalized people away from it. Their only gateway into it being someone's caddy, aka the person who carries around the golf clubs and is ordered around by another person. I'm sorry if you're a golfer, I enjoy golfing too, but you also can't deny that it's bad for the environment, it is based on white supremacy, and it takes up a lot of fucking land. So understanding the reputation and historical context of golf, the musical takes that and makes fun of it by saying that Benny, a lower class black man, is going to be so rich that a rich white man is going to be his caddy, flipping the power dynamic. And that rich white man was Donald Trump, who at the time of this musical was not president of the United States. In my opinion, keeping the lyric the same would have been hilarious because Donald Trump targeted Latina people, and so there would have been like an additional layer of comedy with that joke. I was thinking that maybe they had to change it for some legal issues, but I'm pretty sure that parody in a fictional work about famous people is protected by fair use copyright laws. And also, they could have just used another rich white person. But you know what? Considering it's Warner Brothers and, well, you know, any film company has a history of white supremacy, because they have to appease white supremacy since they are major financial contributors. You know, maybe that was a reason they changed it. But going back to the lyric, changing it to Tiger Woods, the line is nothing now. It's just golfing. And regardless of what you think of Tiger Woods, you know, he is one of the most popular Black American golf players. And I don't know, it just seems counterproductive to make a black man your caddy within the context of what the original line stood for. Quick break, you will notice that I say white supremacy a lot. And you might be thinking, isn't that a little too harsh? Actually, it's not. What I've learned after all my classes in university is that it's more productive and accurate to label something as white supremacy than as racism. When you say something is racist, people will go on and on debating about whether or not something is actually racist, and then the conversation doesn't go anywhere. But if you reframe it in a way that says this stems from white supremacy and perpetuates it, it makes the conversation a lot more organic and productive. And of course, there are situations in which racism is the more appropriate word, but, you know, That's my explanation. It's funny because the movie wanted to blatantly address gentrification, and yet it is unsuccessfully criticized in the movie. The salon does endure the effects of capitalism in the musical, but the movie is very in your face about it, kind of like holding the audience's hand if they don't really understand capitalism and gentrification. I assume to make it more palpable, to make it more consumable for majority of its audience. In the beginning of the movie, it's stated that a lot of small local businesses are closing down due to gentrification. The salon, which is represented by these three characters, is one of those small businesses that is closing down to move to a more expensive neighborhood in New York City. In the beginning scene in the salon, a lot of their customers are talking about how the salon's new location is going to be inaccessible to them. And those filler scenes are accurate, just basing it off my surface level perception of them. But I want to focus on how the salon workers react to gentrification and how the movie wants the audience to feel about it. On the moving day of the salon, the owner is upset because there's no going away party or some sort of celebration for this big change. So she rallies the community together to party, which is the song Carnaval de Barrio. Oh my god. The amount of times I've listened to this soundtrack and I still doubt my pronunciation for all of the Spanish words. The song is about having pride and celebrating your heritage and identity. I'm not really sure how that translates from her moving and gentrification. Did you want the audience to celebrate that she's moving because of gentrification? I'm a little confused. And this is not the first time this character has embraced gentrification. When Kevin announces at the dinner scene that he sold the rest of his company to pay for Nina's tuition, she is immediately excited. I understand wanting to support Nina and her pursuit for higher education, but there was no remorse for the fact that Kevin has sold the company that he has spent his whole life building and is the only source of income for his family. What exactly is the message that they want to send with this character? Because I'm kind of fucking confused. Also, I want to point out that this was the gay rep that was advertised in the movie. To the point where there was an event in San Francisco that they were holding like a showing for this movie for Pride Month? With this representation, oh boy, I feel bad for the people who went to watch it, and this is the shit that they saw. There's a montage in the beginning of the movie where people are getting ready for work. There's like 3 seconds of one person in the couple pulling the other out of bed to wake up. And like, first of all, sharing the same bed does not necessarily imply sexual and or romantic relationship. Like, I honestly saw that and just thought, oh, they're family and they're sharing a bed, because that's normal in cultures, so I didn't even read that as gay. The other representation for this couple is them calling each other mi amor, which is common to call people who are not your significant other, and it's so quick and unimportant, it's really easy to miss. And obviously they have a very huge age gap, and I'm not gonna spend time debating about age gaps because that conversation is not gonna go anywhere, but I will say, as a fact, historically and now, gay and trans people are seen and accused of being pedophiles. And the fact that Hollywood is only comfortable having gay characters if there is an age gap, it can't, yeah, hello? Do you see what I mean? So the screenwriter uses Vanessa as a narrative tool to give another perspective on gentrification. The movie definitely gives her more screen time in an attempt to give her more of a backstory and more like individuality as a character, because in the musical she was definitely just a romantic interest. Despite that though, her arc in the movie is shit. But first, talking about capitalism. In both the musical and the movie, Vanessa attempts to purchase an apartment in a richer part of New York City. And she is denied housing because in the United States, it's very common for leasing companies and landlords to create these barriers meant to prevent poor people, specifically poor people of color from purchasing the place even though they can afford it. Which I can say from experience. Oh boy. In the movie, they give her a lot of screen time to build up this part of her arc. But despite spending more time on it, they don't actually bring any new information to the table. And in the musical, this capitalistic elitist barriers is explained in literally 2 lines. If you wanted to give that part of her story more time, you should have introduced something new, because now it just feels like bad time management and bad screenwriting. Going a bit to analyze Vanessa's character arc, there is no character arc. In fact, the conclusion of her arc is getting romantically involved with Usnavi. And I will delve into that a little more once I get to Usnavi's section, but yeah, wow, you really fleshed out her character, y'all. Another major plot point of gentrification is the Rosarios closing down, which is true in both the movie and the musical. But that also has to do with like Nina's arc and some other themes, so I will be delving that into the upcoming section. The next theme is the theme of dreams. Both the movie and the musical have a narrative focus on dreams. In the musical, it is more focused on criticizing the American dream, and in the movie, they still talk about dreams, but it's like they took out the cultural influences of each character's dreams, which takes away from the point of the story. In regards to the American dream, all the characters contribute to that, but in particular, the main characters, Nina and Usnavi. Kevin, Nina's father, and Abuela Claudia are important secondary characters that really contribute to this narrative. And as individuals, Kevin and Claudia also delve into generational dreams, generational trauma, and also immigrant struggles. Removing their presence and changing the story in the movie, it takes away from the narrative, and the theme of dreams falls really flat. Okay, let's delve into Nina first. Nina is the one who made it out of the barrio. This is an overused first-generation immigrant story. Personally, the way it's handled in the musical makes it one of the best iterations that I've seen. The barriers of white supremacy did not stop Nina from going to Stanford. And ever since she was a child, she has carried the weight of the expectations of her whole community to make it in the world of the rich white elite. But at Stanford, those barriers do end up stopping her. She worked 2 jobs to pay for her tuition, leading to poor grades and academic probation, then lost her scholarship and eventually dropped out. And then she spends months in California because she's too afraid and ashamed to tell her parents what happened. In the musical, she reunites with Benny, they sing Benny's Dispatch, and then she stays there to hang out until her parents arrive, and she reveals she dropped out of university. Her parents are shocked and upset that she has dropped out, and also with her dishonesty with them. Once Benny, Nina, and her mother are gone, it leads to my second favorite song in this musical, Inútil, which is sung by the father. The reoccurring theme of the song is feeling useless, which is what inútil means in Spanish. Kevin sings about his own life and how his father was a poor farmer, and how Kevin dreamt of being the one to break the cycle of oppression and poverty, which connects to the American dream. And he did this with his company and his ability to fund his daughter's higher education. He wants to make sure that Nina has the resources to achieve her dreams because he did not have the support to achieve his. Additionally, because in the musical, the reason Nina drops out is because of money, Kevin feels useless in the face of capitalism, and useless because he feels that he has continued the cycle of poverty. Hence, the next time we see Kevin is him announcing that he has sold his company to pay for Nina's tuition. That inner turmoil and the build-up to Kevin deciding to sell his company is emphasized in his solo. He sings, "I will not be the reason that my family can't succeed. I will do what it takes. They'll have everything they need. Or all my work, all my life, everything I've sacrificed will have been useless." This song gives him more depth and more context to the situation, which is essential for his character, and it is entirely removed in the movie. On top of the way he's written and the lack of screen time, he is reduced to the stereotypical protective immigrant father, brainwashed by white supremacy and willingly desires assimilation. In the musical, he's not a parent vicariously living through his child because of his mistakes and regrets. It's different for immigrants, and I don't think that was translated well for the audience who has only watched the movie. In the movie, when Kevin hears the news from Nina, he's very dismissive and concerned about public image. He's literally like, "Shh, We can't let people know we're having financial problems. We can't discuss this in public, which is true and reflective of the way that cishet immigrant men of color with a lot of toxic masculinity would react in this situation. Speaking from, my experience, but his solo gives him more depth, and the audience knows more about his history because he's more than that. And they cut that out of they cut that out in the movie. If you are someone who got that without the context and think I'm being too harsh, you have to think about the people who won't get that and how that just perpetuates an already strong stereotype about immigrant parents. And yes, there was an attempt to give him more depth towards the end of the movie when he randomly has this conversation with Benny, but this emotional breakdown, this emotional scene happening right after Nina breaks the news, makes more sense for his character reacting to a life-changing revelation and for the pacing of the story. Also, why to Benny? Like, is it because he was a mentor to Benny? But there wasn't any development for their relationship in this conversation. So then the question is, what purpose does this scene serve? I think it was motivated by an agenda, and I don't like it. The way Kevin talks about his life in this movie, it's like he has no agency or purpose, and he idolizes Nina as his savior and the savior of the community, as if they do not have the power and agency to do it for themselves. It dehumanizes immigrants and degrades the work that Kevin has done, and embraces and idolizes the path of immigrants assimilating into Western culture. It's just really focused on a toxic view of the American dream without criticizing it. And again, I'm saying this because of how it's framed in the movie. In the movie, the reason Nina drops out is because it costs her father a lot of money. And just to remind you of how it is in the musical, Nina worked 2 jobs to pay for tuition, which led to poor grades and academic probation. Then she lost her scholarship, and then she dropped out, and then she spent months in California building the courage to admit that to her family. But for some reason, the screenwriter of this movie really wanted to emphasize culture shock as the reason Nina dropped out. I mean, at an Ivy League university, yeah, culture shock, that is literally an institution built on white supremacy. So I see what they're trying to get at. But at the dinner scene, which is the height of this narrative conflict, Nina brings up that on her first day, she was racially profiled and searched for stealing. While racial profiling is a good topic to touch on, in this moment, at the height of the conflict, choosing a singular event was not the best decision in my opinion. Whereas in the musical, dropping out because of financial barriers is a struggle she endured her entire time at Stanford. This addresses how higher education is built to block out and punish marginalized people in an elite institution. This is a stronger example because it's addressing that this is a systemic issue rooted in white supremacy. You've already established in the lunch scene, which is at the beginning of the movie when she tells Kevin that she dropped out, that because of white supremacy, she was treated as an outsider. In this conversation at the dinner, you don't need to establish that again with a singular event, and should have instead picked something that hit harder and encompasses her overall experience at Stanford. Make her talk about the mental drain of being treated badly because she is a poor Latina woman in an institution that values white supremacy. Just a little side note, the shoe shining story that he brings up at the dinner scene in the movie was originally told towards the end of the musical when Nina tells her parents that she wants to go back to Stanford. They made it like this casual, funny memory that Kevin has told at parties multiple times, when originally it was told in a serious scene between the family and in the conclusion of Nina's character arc. Also, Nina's mother is in the musical. I understand cutting out, her scenes because screen time, but why did you kill her off? In both the movie and the musical, Kevin sells his company to pay for Nina's tuition, and Nina refuses his money. And then the end of her arc is deciding that she wants to go to Stanford. What's different is how she gets to that point and her motivation. Now I have to talk about how the movie handled people who were undocumented. Let me start off by giving credit to my podcast co-host Andrea for pointing out the things that were wrong with how they approached this topic. As a non-Latina person, a lot of this shit flew over my head, so I want to make sure I give credit to them because they understand this on a personal level. And I also want to acknowledge that this experience is not limited to Latina people, but, the movie is focusing on Latina experiences. First of all, the pacing for Sonny's arc is terrible. There's like 3 scenes. In the musical, he doesn't have an arc. He's just a background character. In the movie, he does, and it's done really poorly. Well, his arc is like 3 scenes, so it's barely an arc, but it's there. When you're writing a story, you have to put pieces of information throughout the story at a reasonable pace. And that way, when you have big reveals, it feels earned, and it's not just you throwing it in there. Another flaw in this movie, and honestly a common flaw in movies in general, is that when you reveal information to a character, that does not reveal information to all of your characters. And on the flip side of that, when you reveal information to your characters, you have to make sure it's information that your audience can understand, especially when it's a scene as simple as this one. So Sonny is Usnavi's cousin, and he works at Usnavi's store. And the scene I'm talking about is an hour into the movie where Usnavi talks with Sonny's father because he wants to bring Sonny to the Dominican Republic with him so that Sonny can live with him for some reason. I don't understand why Sonny was brought into Usnavi's arc, but whatever. There's just so many flaws, and I absolutely have no fucking idea what the screenwriter was doing. Let me go step by step explaining this scene because it is worth showing you how shockingly terrible it is. So Usnavi is trying to convince Sonny's father to let Sonny move to the Dominican Republic. Usnavi's saying that he'll pay for everything, Sonny will get an education there, and so on. And then, the first thing that this director, John M. Chu, wants the audience to see from the father is his sleeve of tattoos. And honestly, John M. Chu, I already have beef with you because of Crazy Rich Asians, so I'm watching you, bud. Anyways, the camera pans all the way up until we see the father distantly staring off, very clearly not paying attention at all to what Usnavi is saying. And then it cuts to a shot of him staring at an American football game. And then Usnavi says, "You're unsure, talk to me." And then Sonny's father gets up and it cuts to another angle, and now we see the living room, littered with empty beer bottles. And they deliberately emphasize this and force the audience to pay attention to this because Sonny's father is setting down an empty beer bottle. And then he grabs more beer from the mini fridge, tells Usnavi to chill out, and then focus his eyes back on the game. He and Usnavi say some words, and then the father says, "The kid doesn't listen to shit I say anyway." So, yeah, okay, so we are establishing really heavily that he is an emotionally distant father, with the beer, the tattoos, and the dismissive way he talks about his son. I don't know if this is a stereotype for Latina fathers, and of course that's also grouping a bunch of ethnicities together, but I can say that tattoos and drinking alcohol is the go-to for media stereotyping what abusive fathers look like. And the media should stop perpetuating that because it is used to target people of color. And so this is at the end of the scene. "Dad, how do you pay him?" Usnavi, "Cash." "Dad, ever wonder why? Ever?" And then Usnavi stares back at him and he looks sad. End scene, cut to the next one. So, that scene is the first hint to the audience that Sonny is an undocumented immigrant. I understand what they were trying to do. It was just done really poorly. Okay, so they were trying to tell the audience that Sonny gets paid in cash because he doesn't have a bank account, because banks put up barriers that prevent people who are undocumented from opening a bank account. I'm sorry, did you really think that translated well to the audience? Come with me. Come with me. Into my brain, let's have a thought process together. Who is this for? Who is your target audience? Is this for Latina people? Hold on, let me think. Well, you kind of poorly present Latina experiences by following a lot of stereotypes and emphasizing the savior complex and assimilation in your story. Oh, and you also reference and celebrate Afro-Latina people, despite the fact that you didn't even cast any. Oh, and you only cast light-skinned people, so just dunking your movie in colorism. And you also badly represent people who are undocumented and make documented people their savior. Kind of sounds like Latina people were not the target audience. Hence, non-Latina people, and, if we're being realistic, white people are the target audience. Because that's how Hollywood appeases white supremacy when they are forced to put people of color in their movies. But this is the funny part, okay? So they wanted to educate white people on the struggles that people who are undocumented experience, and then they don't make that information accessible to them. All of the context clues in that scene, the makeup, the costume, the set, the props, the dialogue, the acting, all of that to make sure the audience knows that he is an abusive father suffering from alcoholism. Again, literally just perpetuating a stereotype. None of that is relevant to the point of the fucking scene. None of that effort went into making sure that the audience understands and learns that people who are undocumented cannot have bank accounts because the institution is built in a way that prevents them from accessing this institution. I don't know how it is in other countries, but not having a bank account is a huge barrier. You need bank statements for opportunities and utilizing institutions for basic needs. If that is what they wanted the audience to learn, they did a really fucking shit job doing it. Ugh, fuck me, dude. If you or someone you know is undocumented, there is a loophole that allows you to open a bank account, and there is a link to in the description for that. So going back, I will be going back to Nina's arc in a second, don't worry. The next scene of Sunny's arc is him verbally revealing that he is someone who is undocumented, and it's 40 minutes after the first scene? Are you sure about the pacing, dude? Because, first of all, the first scene didn't even land with the audience, and the second scene is, way after. How is the audience supposed to connect the two together? Is this even a character arc? Oh wait, it's not, because this movie just wanted to utilize people who are undocumented as a narrative tool to develop their documented characters and make them feel better. Wow, raising so much awareness for undocumented experiences and giving people who are undocumented a voice. Thank you so much, In the Heights, for all your hard work and activism. So the scene I'm referring to is Nina and Sunny going to a protest that fights for the rights of people who are undocumented. And it's at this protest that Sunny finds out that there are barriers that prevent him from going to higher education. And then Sunny goes away from the crowd because he's sad by this news, and he says I knew I couldn't get a license, but now I can't go to college. And now Nina knows that he is undocumented. And then there's this little pause because Sunny is devastated and trying to process this information, and Nina is sympathizing with him. They're and then the next scene is Nina announcing that she wants to go back to Stanford. It's for a good reason, and I appreciate that. She wants to go into a career that supports kids who are undocumented. So there's a lot of points I want to make about this scene. Fuck, dude. What the fuck? Okay, so how that... Oh my god. How that plot unfolds really pushes the savior complex of people who are documented. This movie really emphasized having a voice in a country that was built on white supremacy, and then it goes and it doesn't give a voice to the people who are undocumented. It is important to understand that this movie is centered around people who are documented, not people who aren't. Because of this translates as a savior complex. Sonny is the only character in this movie who is explicitly undocumented, and his sole purpose in this movie is to be a narrative tool that develops the character arcs of people who are documented. Like, just take a moment and think about how fucked up that is. There is additional irony to this scene that is meant to give people who are undocumented a voice. And at the end of the scene, the crowd is chanting "Tell our stories," which is problematic in itself because it's like saying that people who are undocumented don't have agency and the power to tell their own stories. When they have this voiceover, it's focused on Nina and Sonny. And let me just point out that Nina is the one closest to the camera and Sonny is blurred out. So, like, who exactly does the movie want us to focus on? Whose emotions are we supposed to focus on? I think it's Nina's. Some of the lines that Sonny has, I mean, they're blatantly just idolizing Nina and focusing on her guilt and how that fuels her savior complex. And hey, if you think I'm making shit up, the next scene is Nina announcing that she wants to go back to Stanford, which is the only thing the audience can focus on because it is the conclusion of a main character's arc. Zero time for the audience to even process the information they revealed at the protest. Zero time for the audience to feel for the people who are undocumented. Instead, we immediately go to the character who is documented and their fucking character arc. They don't give Sonny any depth beyond that. Sonny, who is the character who was supposed to give people who are undocumented a voice in this movie. The changes that they have done in this movie is an insult to the characters in the musical. You're telling me that Nina, someone who is smart, who is a Latina woman, who loves her community, who loves her heritage, who loves her identity, needed to see someone who was undocumented grieve in front of her to even realize that there is a need to help them. Oh my god, bro. How is that not supposed to read as a savior complex? It's very reminiscent of how Westerners need crises to trend on social media to even give the slightest fuck about what's happening in other countries, even in their own country. They're always saying shit like, why aren't people talking about this? Bro, of fucking course they're talking about this. They're living this. You just don't give a fuck until it helps you stroke your fucking savior complex. And you know, I'm sorry if that's hard for you to hear, but like, if you want to be a productive and good ally, that is something you need to address and stop doing. And you know, just this shit is a huge fucking insult to Sonny. Sonny in the musical is so outspoken and involved in social justice. And it's funny because in the movie, they don't change Sonny's lines in 96,000, so canonically, he is still a character who is heavily involved in social justice. And you want to tell me that Sonny doesn't already know this shit? I just feel like they have greatly reduced the intelligence of Latina people and the characters in the story. People who are undocumented already know this shit. They are aware at a young age of the barriers that white supremacy puts into institutions and resources to make sure that they do not have access to it. They are aware of it because they live that experience, and they are told by their community about this because they have to learn how to protect themselves so that they are not outed to the fucking government. So again, let me ask, what the fuck in the Heights? Also, just like a little side note, the politician leading the protest made me fucking laugh when I saw that. Politician looks like she is meant to resemble Kamala Harris. And I mean, listen, look, there are people behind the casting of this extra, and it feels like the casting call reached out for a specific person for this role. The costume and hair department deliberately made the extra look this way. I'm just saying she looks like she's supposed to look like Kamala Harris, and that was motivated by a political agenda. And before I get people in my comments saying shit like, no, Kamala Harris is a person for the people. No, she isn't, and you should look into that, and I am not going to educate you on it. And, you know, just by the way, politicians can never be for the people because they're fucking politicians, and you should stop putting them on a pedestal. And my direct response to the situation is that historically, Kamala Harris has supported policies that identify kids who are undocumented and turn them over to ICE. So like, hey, movie crew, you know, this was a terrible fucking decision on your part, buddy. I won't spend too much time talking about Benny. I just have a couple of random points I want to make. Benny works at the Rosarios, the cab company. Benny is the only person in the musical who is not Latine. He is black. And in the musical, he is constantly reminded that he will never be part of the community because he is an outsider. And in particular, he will never be part of the Rosario family. When Kevin announces that he sold the company, Benny is extremely upset because he's been trying to build a career out of his job at the Rosarios. In the musical, he wrongfully targets all of his anger and frustration at Nina because she is the reason he has lost his career path, and because Kevin always makes him feel like an outsider to their family. The conflict between Benny and Nina is entirely cut out in the movie, and it makes their romance really bland and doesn't give the audience any sort of motivation to root for them. And then the blackout happens, and the next morning it's implied that Benny and Nina have like addressed this conflict and slept together. I just want to say I hate that. I hate that the conversation was off screen because we don't even know if there was a conversation. Media favors the idea that you can use sex to resolve relationship conflict, and I hate that because it's not healthy and it doesn't promote good communication skills. I would have liked them to properly explore that in the movie. However, it was entirely cut out, so it doesn't fucking matter anyways. The morning after is through this beautiful song called Sunrise, which is this beautiful duet between Nina and Benny. Honestly, for a couple of years, I did not give a fuck about Nina and Benny, but now I love them. Benny has that I love my wife energy, and I know they're not married, but he is already so devoted to Nina, and he has like this unconditional belief that Nina is gonna do great things in her life, and it's just so beautiful, and I love them. In Sunrise, Nina is teaching Benny Spanish because he's just trying to bridge that gap and be more involved in her community and her culture, and it's so touching, and it's a damn shame that they cut it out of the movie. And immediately after that, Nina and Benny go back to Nina's house, or the Rosarios, and Kevin throws Benny out. Benny serves as a narrative tool to bring up the anti-blackness in Latina communities, and that's really emphasized in this scene when Kevin throws Benny out, because he is an outsider and this action is motivated by anti-blackness. I will say that it was not explored as much as it should have been in the musical, and if In the Heights had a second chance, they should take the opportunity to expand on the anti-blackness in Latina communities, because it is not something that is addressed in mainstream media. Oh wait, they did have a second chance and they just cut it out because fuck that, I guess. And cutting out all this stuff and his conflict with Nina and Kevin makes his romance with Nina underdeveloped and removes all of his character depth. He's just another plain romantic interest with no individuality. And like, the romance sucks. Alright, Usnavi, Oh god. Okay, so honestly, I am so overwhelmed by how butchered Usnavi's arc is that I literally have no energy to explain this as thoroughly as I could. Usnavi is the main character, so naturally he has the potential to have the most impact and the most powerful storyline. And his arc really resonates with me on a personal level, so his portrayal in the movie just feels like a attack on me. So while the Rosarios have a very traditional take on the American dream, it's balanced out with other characters and their perception of the American dream and them removing themselves from it. We see that in Sonny and Claudia, but especially with Usnavi, because he is the other main character. Ruining Usnavi's arc the way that they did in the movie just means that all we have is Nina. And that means that what we have is pursuing the American dream and accepting what white supremacy wants us to do. Usnavi's arc in the musical is being freed from achieving the American dream. He realizes you don't need a big fancy life to have a legacy. The American dream is this toxic idea spread by white supremacy. White supremacy forces us into believing that there is an ideal to strive towards that will make us be successful. Usnavi does not see his family-owned Stop and Shop as success because in the eyes of white supremacy, certain careers are deemed successful and success is measured by the amount of money you earn. Usnavi is embarrassed and ashamed of his life and his store because by white supremacy standards, it does not have a purpose or legacy in this world. And this is emphasized with the language Usnavi uses to describe himself. Usnavi's parents came to the States to pursue the American dream. They established this family-owned Stop and Shop and died young. And so Usnavi inherited the store as well as the pressure to continue pursuing the American dream. But as Usnavi has emphasized throughout the story, even though he has spent his whole life working hard in this store, he remains poor and does not see financial progression. The American dream is the belief that through hard work you can achieve success, and that's obviously a lie that brushes over the barriers, the systemic barriers that white supremacy has built to keep marginalized people from actually achieving the American dream. Because in reality, white supremacy wants marginalized people to stay below them because it profits off of marginalized people being slaves to capitalism. On top of that, gentrification is making it harder for Usnavi to keep his store open and running. Hence, Usnavi wants to move to the Dominican Republic and restore his parents' old bar because that way he can be financially successful, directly in contact with his heritage, and honor his parents' legacy. I also think that part of Usnavi's motivation to move to the Dominican Republic is because Usnavi struggles finding his identity and place in the United States. This is something I think might be more opinionated in comparison to some of the other things I've said, largely because this is based on how Usnavi resonates with me and my experiences, which is not to say that this isn't based on something substantial, because it is. Canonically, Usnavi feels very disconnected from his culture in the sense that he thinks he needs to move to the Dominican Republic to have that connection with his culture and his identity. He refers to the Dominican Republic as home, not the Heights in New York City. In the musical, he is born in the United States, and so speaking as a first-generation American immigrant, I think it's a very common experience for us to feel like we don't really belong and that we are not enough in the eyes of people who grew up in the mainland. And, there's this desire to move there, and we fantasize about, what if things were different and our family never immigrated? And we think these things, all of that just to validate our ethnic identity and feel like we're enough. And so struggling with his American immigrant identity, losing his direct connection when his parents died, and white supremacy, just in general influencing his mindset. These factors all come together to motivate him to move to the Dominican Republic. In the movie, it is established that Usnavi immigrated to the United States when he was 8 years old, and immigrant experiences are important and valuable, but the decision to include 2 lines that changed it from being born in the US to immigrating as a child, it contradicts Usnavi's character. Usnavi, who is so based on first-generation experiences. If you are going to change that about Usnavi, you have to alter so many things because immigrant and first-generation experiences are not synonymous. It's also problematic because it contradicts other information in the movie that I will get to later on in this section. Back to Usnavi in the American Dream, my favorite metaphor is how Usnavi compares himself to a streetlight. In the opening act of the verse is that he is stuck to the corner like a streetlight. There is a negative connotation with this line because he is unhappy with his life, and like a streetlight, he feels stuck with what he has, like his life is stagnant. At the end of the musical, he embraces that he is a streetlight and sees the value in it. He sings, "Yeah, I'm a streetlight chilling in the heat. I illuminate the stories of the people in the street." And then he also sings, "Abuela, I'm sorry, but I ain't going back 'cause I'm telling your story. And I can say goodbye to you smiling. I found my island. I've been on it this whole time. I'm home." Lin-Manuel Miranda is a great lyricist. Here we can see that Usnavi is no longer bound by the expectations of white supremacy in the American fucking dream. Usnavi is embracing his American immigrant identity and sees the value in his community in a way he did not before, and sees the purpose and legacy in being part of it. I'm gonna stray from Usnavi really quick just to give context on the pacing differences between the musical and the movie. In the musical, everything happens in the span of about 2 days, and in the movie, it's 6 to 7 days, plus an epilogue. The musical is 2 hours long, and the movie is 2.5 hours long. There are narrative beats that you have to follow in a story. That is just a rule of storytelling. There is a point in every story where there is high conflict and heavy emotions. That part of the movie where shit hits the fan and everyone's sad, and it's right before things get better. The movie takes that, chops it up into little pieces, puts their own little pieces in that, and they scatter it throughout the entire movie. On top of that, the movie rearranges the order of the songs so the lines and the emotions don't match up with the story and what the characters are feeling in that moment. So it doesn't feel like there is a low point at all in this movie, and some of them are placed so early in the movie, it doesn't have the emotional impact it's supposed to have. If you're familiar with the musical, you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about, and it's the death of Abuela Claudia, who is, by the way, my favorite character in this musical, and I absolutely fucking hate them for what they did to her in this movie. Even brought the original Broadway actor for this role, who, was nominated for a Tony for this in the musical. And then they just destroyed the character right in front of her for this movie. Abuela Claudia is core to the turning point of every single character's arc in this musical. In the movie, there's about an hour left by the time Abuela dies. It's so early and it spans over 6 to 7 days. And on top of that, what her character does when she's alive is so minimal. All the songs she is a part of is removed, and the solo that gives her character depth has become the song which she dies. Oh, and Carnaval de Barrio, which is a party song, is played after Abuela's death, and it's such a quick, very, very quick tonal shift. All of that added up, it just minimizes the impact that she has on her community and these characters. This is all over the place, and I apologize for that. But let's take another detour to talk about Abuela's arc really quick. Paciencia y Fe, Abuela's solo song, is introduced very early in the musical. Claudia speaks about her mother and the American dream, and how after her mother's death, she has lived her life trying to achieve that dream for her and her mother. It's such a heartbreaking song about how fucked up the American dream is, and I think both the movie and the musical translate that critique very well, so I don't have to explain that in this video. But there are 2 major changes, which is the pacing and the placement of the song, as well as the very last verses. In the musical, the song ends with her revealing that she has won the lottery, and in the movie, it ends with her contemplating whether or not she wants to continue living. It just pisses me off because why? You have simultaneously introduced and ended her arc in the span of 3 minutes. It also changes the impact and meaning of the song itself. The song is about how Claudia has spent her life pursuing the American dream that she inherited from her mother. And when they reveal that she has won the lottery ticket, she is at a loss because she has finally achieved that dream. And there's just so much emotion and so much to explore with that. And just changing it to the song ending with her dying. It's so unresolved and underdeveloped, and it just feels like she didn't, like it just feels hopeless, you know? And I don't like the message that it sends to the audience for them. I don't know. I can't put this into words, but I hope that one of y'all understands what the fuck I'm trying to say. In the musical, Abuela talks with Usnavi about how a third of the lottery money is going to her, a third is going to Usnavi, and the last third is going to Sonny. Abuela still wins the lottery in the movie, but it is revealed towards the end of the movie. Not the very end, but towards it. Usnavi finds it hidden when he is packing up to leave for the Dominican Republic. The fact that Abuela hid the ticket knowing the financial insecurity Usnavi was facing does not make sense to me at all. Again, this is taking over the course of 6 to 7 days, and they do this in the way to shock the audience, but it's so out of character and it doesn't fit the story. I am not gonna even bother talking about how in the movie Usnavi has the money to buy his parents' old bar before he has the lottery money. Narratively, he is established as financially insecure. And also, by doing this, you have made the lottery ticket. It has no point in the story anymore. There's no reason for it. So I just don't understand, but I'm not going to delve into that too much. During the blackout, there were riots. And despite the attempt to protect Usnavi's store, it gets destroyed. This puts Usnavi at a very, very low point in his life. Carnaval de Barrio happens a little bit after that, and that gives Usnavi and the community the hope and strength to keep fighting during this hard time. Let's delve into Carnaval de Barrio really quick. Yes, it is a party song, and it's about loving and being proud of your cultural heritage, but it's also about the blackout and how with patience and faith they can still strive for fulfillment and success. A reoccurring line between Sonny and Vanessa in this song is that we are powerless, and it has a double meaning. Yes, they are powerless because there is a blackout, but also the government does not prioritize bringing back power and providing resources to support poor neighborhoods during a crisis like this. So they're literally financially suffering, and this is emphasized with the salon being closed and Usnavi's store being closed for good. They feel powerless in this fucking country. The blackout really should have been explored more in the movie, especially because it's there to emphasize capitalism and the unequal distribution of resources. And the movie chose to focus on gentrification, and it's all connected. So I don't know why they didn't take that opportunity. Like, I don't know, did you not want to admit that local and state government purposely do not support poor neighborhoods? Is that it? And no, this is not just me pulling shit out of my ass. This month, New York City had a heat wave, and the government told the residents that they couldn't turn on their fans and AC. In fact, landlords were evicting tenants that were doing that in 131-degree heat. That's 55 degrees in Celsius. Meanwhile, the local government allowed those big-ass electric billboards to keep showing ads because money is more important than people. And you know, that's not the only fucked up shit that our government has done, because this country prioritizes capitalism over the lives of marginalized people. In the musical, the Carnival is interrupted with the news that Abuela Claudia has died, and that is the breaking point. Alabanza is a song of mourning, and it was still in the movie, but with the changes in the story and in Abuela's character arc, the emotion just doesn't hit the way that's intended to. They also cut out Everything I Know, which is a solo by Nina, and it's the turning point for her character arc. In the song, Nina is looking at pictures and papers that Abuela has kept throughout her life. She reflects on how Abuela left everything she knew when she came to the United States. As the song progresses, Nina is enlightened with appreciation for what Abuela has done in her life and for the community. Nina receives wisdom and guidance from Abuela because, like Abuela immigrating to the United States, Nina has to leave everything she knows when she goes to Stanford. And so Nina's arc concludes with her deciding to go back to Stanford now that she has seen the strength and the hardships that Abuela and her parents have faced. And I already mentioned this previously, but her arc is not like this in the movie. For Usnavi, with his store being destroyed in the riots and with the challenge of trying to restore it with gentrification, it motivates him to move to the Dominican Republic using the money that he has from the lottery. The finale song is him reminiscing on his memories in New York City and just feeling bittersweet about leaving the country, and he questions who's going to notice when we're gone. And that's just speaking to how gentrification is literally wiping out the Latina community. He also questions if they're even leaving a legacy behind. And in secret, Sonny commissioned Graffiti Pete to graffiti a mural in memory of Abuela Claudia on the door of Usnavi's store. And when Usnavi sees it, his breath is taken away. And in that moment, he realizes that this is home. And there is a purpose in being part of the community, and the community is what keeps their legacy, just as the community is honoring Abuela's legacy. I love that. I really love that, and the movie is different. There are no riots, Usnavi's store isn't destroyed, and there's this weird-ass conflict between Vanessa and Usnavi where Usnavi slut-shames her. As I mentioned before, Usnavi finds out that Abuela saved the lottery ticket for him, but kept it hidden, and Usnavi only found it when he was cleaning up the house when he was leaving for the Dominican Republic. Immediately, Usnavi decides to use that money to get Sonny a lawyer to legalize his citizenship status. Again, major savior complex vibes. I'm not going to go over this again, but there are some other problems with it as well. Remember when I brought up that originally Usnavi was born in the United States and that they changed it to him immigrating when he was 8 years old? Yeah, so technically, Usnavi is also undocumented. Yeah. So I'd say Sonny is 14, 15 years old because he mentions that he was in diapers when he was on the plane to the United States, which puts Usnavi like 22, 23 years old. Big if, Usnavi was able to become a citizen in those 15 years, how is it that he doesn't know his cousin is someone who is undocumented? As someone who was undocumented, Usnavi should understand the hardships that Sonny is going through and be supporting him. Also, it is very, very unlikely that Usnavi did become a legal citizen, just considering the fact that his family was poor. So technically he's in the same situation as Sonny, so he wouldn't have the money to get a lawyer to be a legal citizen. Do you see what I'm saying here? Like, it's contradicting each other. And this is why when you change shit in your story that you are adapting, you have to make sure you change everything, not just throwing in random sentences and thinking that's enough. Also, how they address the crisis of someone who is undocumented is resolved by chance and narratively resolved so quickly it feels like it reduces the hardship that people who are undocumented face. Like, a lottery ticket, really? This is how you want to resolve this? You win that kind of money by chance. What does that say to your audience? What does that say to the people who are undocumented watching this? You know what I mean? Like, it makes me feel dirty. I don't like how they handled it. Also, they say 5 months to 5 years, and as Rhea has pointed out, it can be 20 or more years. So it doesn't communicate to the audience the reality of undocumented experiences. In fact, because you are not reflecting the truth, it solidifies this assumption that becoming a legal citizen is an easy process. And there's a stereotype that the reason why so many Latina people are not legal is because they are lazy. And again, Sony's arc is in 3 scenes, and this crisis has been reduced so much, it's disrespectful. I understand that this is a movie, and that they had 2.5 hours for it. But you are the one who chose to introduce a new story to bring awareness to undocumented experiences. You have the responsibility of handling a very sensitive topic with accuracy, respect, and care, and this is how you handled it. If this is the effort you want to put into bringing awareness, then you might as well have not put it in there at all. Jumping back to Usnavi wanting to stay in the United States, in the movie, on top of Abuela being butchered, her mural is pushed aside to make room for Vanessa. And the scene is so prolonged that by the time we see Abuela's mural, it doesn't feel like Usnavi's decision was influenced by Abuela Claudia at all. They did not change any of the lines in the finale, so Usnavi is preaching about a character that the audience barely knows and has no emotional attachment to. Also, why the fuck is Vanessa there? Are we really going with he stayed in the United States for love? Is that really the story we want to go with? Is that how we're going to resolve this conflict? And then there's the fucking epilogue of him and Vanessa, and it's of them being together, I assume married, and with a child. They have a child, canonically. So the lesson of legacy is no longer from Abuela and about community. It's about getting married and having a fucking child. Are we really doing this, Hollywood? Are we really doing this again? I am so fucking sick of the agenda that to have a legacy, you have to get married and have a child. I am so fucking sick of this shit. Get me the fuck out of here, dude. I'm done. I'm done. There are more things to say, but my brain is tired and I have no energy to think about this movie anymore. I literally want to forget it forever. The movie itself has reached the bare minimum for successfully touching on sensitive and important topics. And by successfully, I mean it has successfully watered down the material and made it consumable and appropriate for white supremacy. I think it will be enjoyable for people who are not familiar with the musical. But like, even then there are problems with the story and the pacing, and honestly, how they present marginalized communities in this movie is so fucking harmful. Maybe it's not enjoyable at all. I don't know. Whatever. I'm so tired, but I have freed myself from thinking about this movie ever again, so I am happy about that. If you have enjoyed this very long video essay on a fictional media, you might enjoy our podcast, Labyrinth of the Bizarre, a queer and trans people of color run podcast that analyzes speculative fiction. Yeah, we specialize in speculative fiction, which includes and is not limited to horror, dystopian, sci-fi, superhero, and more. And if you enjoyed this content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you'd like to support me. And yeah, that's all I have. That's all I have for y'all. Please take care of yourselves. Drink some water, stretch, rest your eyes. I know I need to do all these things after recording this for 4 hours. Fuck me. Yeah, and I will see y'all in the next upload.